2001. This is Black Hawk Down, based on the novel by Mark Bowden and directed by one of our favorite directors, Ridley Scott. What are your thoughts now on Black Hawk Down?
I really like this movie. It is a tough movie to watch, but it's done so well. This is one of those where it showed how great a director Ridley Scott is. I mean, because he's just coming off of Gladiator, right? Gladiator was 2000, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
So he's coming off of this amazing film of Gladiator. He's already got a body of work. And then to do something very, very different in Black Hawk Down and yet still just absolutely nail it. To get the visceral nature of the fight, of the danger of the fight, the emotional balance of having so many characters, but yet getting you to buy into all of these characters and to kind of be able to figure, pinpoint. Like, most of this movie is one large firefight, and yet he still took a little bit of time, and in that short amount of time got you to kind of care about specific characters that you could then follow along through the rest of the story. And just kind of watching this just recently, like, I just noticed just how much he does in that first 30 minutes of the film, of really getting you to kind of just be not in the trenches is not the right word, but kind of be on base with them. And he doesn't really spell things out. He kind of just throws you in the midst of their conversations of their lives on base, or kind of doing their setups for what they're going to be doing in the rest of the film. And you just are kind of thrown in, but he does it in such a way that it just draws you into these characters. It just kind of connects you. Like Eric Bana's character, automatically, I'm kind of in. You kind of get a little bit with Orlando Bloom, but like Ewan McGregor's character is Grimes. You're immediately kind of brought into him. You're also with Josh Hartnett's character, like a lot of these different stuff. And there's not a whole lot of exposition outside of obviously the mission briefings. Like, you get that, and that's kind of needs to be done. And that was, done in a really good way too. But then the rest of it's just basically one large firefight for the rest of the movie time.
Right. You do get a little bit of exposition with them kind of explaining Eversman's, which is Hartnett's, view on the situation. Mm-hmm. But it's done in a real sly, subtle way where he's just conversing with another ranger. Yeah. Of like, what do you think about this situation? And he's like, well, or like, why are we here? Yeah, kind of a thing. And he has that funny line. He's like, why did you become a ranger? And he's like, oh, I think I became a ranger to make a difference, or something like that. Like, they all laugh at him,
He believed the poster.
Yeah. This is a very, very good adaptation from the Bowden novel. Although I did read the novel before I saw the film. Okay. It's one of the rare instances where I had actually picked it up. It was an amazing read.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I came out of the movie like completely, like, they nailed it. There were a couple differences. There's way more characters in the book. Unfortunately, there's also way more special operations units operating in the book than they, like, in the movie. It's Rangers and it's Delta Force. Yeah. And in reality, it's Rangers, it's Delta Force. It's
a couple Navy SEALs.
There's Navy SEAls. There's Air Force. Parajumpers. Mm-hmm. So there's more special operations operating than just those two units. But for the sake of the script, they condensed it. They combined characters. Yeah. Hartnett's Eversman's the combination of about 3 guys. Mm-hmm. It's funny because everybody thought that Eric Bana's character of Hoot, they thought Hoot was like not a real guy. And it turns out Norm Hooten was real Delta. Yeah. And he's like come out of because all these Delta operators have, like, they're all on YouTube now apparently, which is kind of wild. You and I have talked, this stuff fascinates me to no end. And now my problem is when I read the book and then watched the movie, it took me a long time to realize how elite Army Rangers really are. Mm-hmm. Like the Delta guys get all the love in the movie as far as like kind of how badass they are. Yeah. But like if you do your research on like what it takes to become an Army Ranger,
it's rough.
So for our listeners, and you probably know this, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. There are Army Rangers that are part of the Ranger unit. Those are Rangers. And then there's Ranger School. Mm-hmm. And it's not the same thing. No. Ranger School is the Army's leadership school, and anybody can go to it and try to go through it. And it's hard, really hard. And you get a Ranger tab if you pass on your patch. So you could be from a regular infantry unit, and then you'll have a Ranger tab. And it's a big deal to have a tab, but you're not a Ranger. You're Ranger qualified.
Yeah.
These guys are 70. These are Ranger 75th Ranger Regiment.
Yeah.
And the attrition rate is crazy. These are stone cold killers, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's the Army's premier light infantry unit. And there are more Delta Force operators that come out of Ranger Regiment than any other group. The Delta recruits from the entire military, technically, because there have been some Marines, Recon Marines, and Navy SEALs that have left and then joined Delta. There's a few. But most Delta operators come out of the Ranger Regiment. So they're already elite. So then the Delta is just the elite of the elite, like the top 0.00%. So that's why with that understanding, that's why this relatively small number of operators and Rangers were able to kill somewhere in the neighborhood, some estimates as high as like 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah. They were basically hold back a city, the entire militia of Farid Aidid. Which
intel later revealed were in connections and ties with bin Laden.
Yeah. It's one of those things of what these guys experienced was absolutely crazy, ridiculous, but yet, like you said, like they are the elite. Like, I mean, Rangers were supposed to start off like, aren't they supposed to be taking airfields? Wasn't that kind of like their main
Yeah,
role?
That's exactly why they were. Yeah, they're supposed to jump in, parachute in behind enemy lines, and they're built to take an enemy airfield, kill everybody there, occupy it so that other units now have basically an operating base. That was their original intent. But they're also really, really good at pulling security for Delta Force. And that's what they're doing in this movie.
Yeah.
You have the 4 chalks on the corners of the Olympic building that Delta is going to do a snatch and grab at. And so the Rangers are pulling security.
Yeah.
And that's very common. In fact, that's what Rangers did throughout the global war on terror in Afghanistan and into Iraq was often pulling security for Delta ops. So, amongst other things.
Yeah.
I didn't have as good of understanding of like the elite level, I think, of the Ranger when I first, first saw the movie and
they definitely come across as not nearly as elite as Delta, which, I mean, obviously Delta is far more elite, but they come across less as an elite unit and
I think that might be a legit criticism of the film is that that Ridley doesn't portray them maybe quite as elite as they really are. Although I will say they've gotten more after 9/11. Ranger Regiment really upped their game, and like now the unit is light years ahead of where it would have been in the early 90s as far as their equipment, their tactic, because they get the best stuff like weapon systems, intel, all of it would have been light years ahead of where they were in 93. But in 93, I mean, they were still cream of the crop. Yeah, the only thing in the book that they don't do in the movie, and I kind of understand what they did, the book's like full of descriptions of how the militia used their wives and children as shields.
Yeah.
And would shoot from behind them repeatedly. And initially, American personnel weren't firing back, were trying not to, and then eventually it was like, it's me or you.
Yeah.
And so had Ridley Scott portrayed that on film, like I don't think audiences would have been able to get past that. Like I don't think the viewer, and I don't even know if he would have been able to get past the censors even at an R rating. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think it definitely would have been difficult to have that in the movie. So
yeah.
But going back to the movie.
Yes.
This is kind of essentially a who's who of up and coming actors in, future movies. Like there's so many like actors that are now big names that weren't big names at the time. I mean, you had The Tom Hardy obviously was in this movie with kind of a small bit role. I mean, you had obviously Josh Hartnett was already pretty big. Ewan McGregor was pretty big. Eric Bana was also
this launched Bana.
Yeah.
In fact, the complaint was Bana like steals every scene he's in this movie.
But you had also a little bit of like Jeremy Piven. Sam Shepard, of course, is amazing as always.
Hugh Dancy is the medic.
You also have Jason Isaacs as Captain Steele. Yeah. Who at this point, I don't think he was that big. Though I do laugh that the majority of the people in this movie who are portraying U.S. soldiers are British.
They're all Brits.
Yeah, they're all Brits. They're almost all Brits.
I don't know if Ridley just felt like he could have an easier time directing some fellow countrymen or not. But yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
Like a good mix.
So I think it's easier to count the Americans.
It's like 50-50, yeah. Kind of reminded me of what they did with Band of Brothers, where like half the cast are British playing American, and you just can't tell.
No.
I still want to know what it is about British actors that a lot of them can just pull off an American accent with no issue at all.
Yeah.
And the inverse is just not really that true. Like we are American actors that try to do Brit just botch it.
Yep. I mean, the only one, Dick Van Dyke, really is the only person who can pull off
Oh my gosh. Oh, that was good. Chim chimney, chim chim chiroo.
So, but going back to kind of what I was saying is like, you've got all these characters that you're kind of trying to kind of follow. And really it's like the first 30 minutes that just kind of really kind of spends this time just kind of getting you to quickly get into their lives. So that way, when you get into it, they're all wearing, helmets and headgear and all the other different stuff that you still care. Like you are at least connected to these people kind of a little bit. I mean, I love kind of the balance of William Fichtner's character and Eric Bana's character of like kind of Eric Bana's kind of like William's kind of smoothing the way for Eric Bana because Eric just doesn't care. Like just is like
one of my favorite lines in any movie ever.
This is my safety.
Here's my safety. You dealt with a bunch of cowboys. That's a hot weapon.
It's a hot weapon. You did a little taxpayer funded safari.
The real guy said that was kind of that was amplified in the movie. There really wasn't much of a rivalry between Delta operators and Rangers. Like they didn't hang out together a bunch, but it wasn't.
From what I know is that there's a lot more leeway given to Delta operators of being able to obviously they wore their hair longer. They don't have to follow.
Oh, they do. No, they do everything they want to.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, there's no grooming standards.
Yeah.
It's a quote Generation Killer. The grooming standards. Hitler stashes rag, man.
Hitler stashes rag.
No, there's none of those standards. They have all the custom weaponry. I mean, if you think Rangers get the best of the U.S. Army, Delta's budget is just as good, and they get bleeding edge stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they built that rivalry in, like the tension between the two of them because tension in movies is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you keep watching.
I love when the actor that plays Pilla does the impression of Steel.
Sorry.
Which is a really brutal setup for when Pilla dies.
Yeah.
Isaacs is such a good actor that if you go back and watch when they announced that Pilla's been KIA and they cut to Steele, to Isaacs, and that look that comes over his face is like, it's subtle, but you can read his countenance really well of just like, it's just restrained devastation. I consider the best war movies pretty much all need to be anti-war.
Yeah.
And this is another one.
Does a great job. I'm going to pivot here for a little bit. So this definitely has a look to it. They have done something. And Laura was watching it with me, and so she was really wanting me to make sure that I asked you about your thoughts on kind of what they're doing to kind of get this look, like what kind of filters, or because it's very reminiscent of kind of Gladiator, of how Gladiator looks. And I don't know if it's just the DVD transfer. I don't have this on Blu-ray, so I don't know if it's the DVD transfer of why it looks a little more washed out, like kind of that same like Matrix green, the DVD, they just went a little overboard in the transfer. But I saw this in the theater, but I can't remember what it looked like. I've just watched the DVD too many times.
I don't know if this film was digitally color corrected or not, because the first completely digitally color corrected movie was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which I think is that 2000?
Yeah.
So it's possible that this had digital color correction on it. I don't know. I happen to think that a lot of the look of this movie is in the film stock, and then the way they process it, it's a really high contrast movie. Like the shadows are like inky dark in the movie for the most part. There is a green tint to a lot of the night stuff, like especially once they're in battle. And it's not night vision or anything like that. It's just there's like green in the image a little bit. Of course, the DVD would kind of amplify that. It is a really strong look.
Yeah.
Like I would say it's an even stronger look than Gladiator.
Yeah.
It reminds me, the look of the movie reminds me of stuff that Ridley's brother Tony Scott would do when he made like Man on Fire later. And then Domino with Keira Knightley has a very similar look to this movie. Really high contrast, pretty high saturation. Like last time I watched it, it's not like there's scenes in the beginning that are kind of a blue desaturated look to them, but generally the skin all looks. My thing was when I first watched it, like it's pretty. Honestly, there's a lot of areas where the movie's pretty inconsistent, where you could tell they shot like battle sequences over like a week or two, and so the lighting isn't real consistent.
Yeah,
everything's so frenetic that you don't really notice it. I don't think it was digitally color corrected though in theaters when it first came out.
Right.
I think it's been tweaked a lot on Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it on Blu-ray, so.
I think he's futzed with it on Blu-ray.
There's definitely a grittiness to the way it looks that I think really pulls out in what he ever did to desaturate it or to.
But he took a lot of the tricks they established on Saving Private Ryan with the shutter angle, where you can see like the particles of dirt and stuff fly up in the air during explosions, which Private Ryan kind of famously took advantage of. So they kind of duplicated some of that. If Private Ryan didn't exist, I think this movie would have like won way more Oscars and stuff. Like I feel like it just gets compared to it because it's only
3 years removed.
It sits at a 7.7 on IMDb, which I think is a little low for me, but obviously Generation Kill came out, which is very honest look at it, but that they don't ever get into like the kind of combat you see in this movie. No. I hate to call it a modern war film because it's over 2 decades old, but it still kind of is because, I mean, a lot of the weapons they're using in this movie, they were using up to just a few years ago. So the Delta guys are all using like M4 carbines, which they just recently like switched away from that. Like the Humvees, like the Little Bird, they still fly those helicopters. Like most of the equipment in this movie is still generally isn't like that far removed. So it still feels pretty like a modern war movie. And I think nothing's come out after this since then that's like tops it in that more modern. Yeah. I guess American Sniper is pretty good, but the Hurt Locker is good, but I would never put the Hurt Locker above this, even though the Hurt Locker won Best Picture. It doesn't. It's a different movie. It's not but it's ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous. Like there's nothing like authentic about the Hurt Locker at all. About how that job is done. Like I like the movie. I love Jeremy Renner. I'm sorry. That movie is absurd. Absurd. That's not how they do ordnance disposal. Like ever. No. It's just, it was.
Very rarely is it cut the red wire.
That movie, the fact that movie won Best Picture just floored me. Yeah. And the fact that Zero Dark 30 didn't.
Yes. Like, that's a fantastic film.
Yeah. This is my rant.
There's your rant on.
Yeah. No, back to Black Hawk Down. It is absolutely tremendous. And I do want to get into the rewatchability of this movie is just next level. In fact, I'm more likely to put this on and watch it again than even Private Ryan, even though I think Private Ryan's a much better film. This movie's is just as weighty, but kind of in a different way. But it's more frenetic than Private Ryan gives you these slow moments where the film slows down and it almost allows you to contemplate like the darkness of the film. Whereas this thing, you really don't get to that point until really like near the very end.
Yeah. Again, it's like 1 90-minute firefight essentially.
Which that's what it was. It was the longest sustained firefight since Vietnam involving U.S. personnel. I was too young to like remember.
Same.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah. I have more vivid memories of watching the first Gulf War on CNN than I do these events.
Well, and just to think about the fact that it was, even 20,000 Marines that showed up before these guys even stayed
it was
back.
Right, which kept the militia at bay. The militia didn't want to deal with getting tangled with 20,000 pissed off United States Marines.
Yeah.
The Marines move out. And then didn't a bunch of Pakistani personnel
got killed.
Killed. Like
there's like not an ambush or something like that. It was a firefight, and they were UN peacekeeper Pakistani.
Yeah, but they were. It was Pakistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they bring in special forces basically now. To try to raid and capture. Yeah, because it was Pakistan UN armored personnel carriers that come in at the end of the movie to help get them out. Yeah, it was an absolute mess. So I don't have good things to say about the Clinton administration at the time for denying them heavy air support.
APCs and AC-130.
C-130 Spectre gunships. Yeah. Maybe the second coolest aircraft ever ever made. Yeah. By the way, they tried to figure out how to put howitzers on a Chinook. And it couldn't do it.
It didn't happen. Bummer. I will say I do think some of the gunfight or the actual warfare of like the miniguns, that stuff is done really, really well. Like whoever's flying those helicopters in this film had to be I'm assuming that they're using military personnel.
I think so. Yeah, I think those are. Yeah.
They're too well trained and too flying in formation and all that stuff to not be, and it looks so good. Like it really does. All the effects just look fantastic. It's done really well. I do want to say, I remember I watched all of the behind the scenes stuff on this. And one of my favorite things when they talk about all of the trainings the actors went through and just the difference of the 100 guys who went for ranger school. And it was like, literally you're staying in the barracks. Like you're getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. or whatever to do PT. And then you're going through all the different stuff. And they're really working them all day long for 6 weeks or something like that. I forget exactly how long it was. And then it cuts to, basically Eric Bana and Nikolai
Coster.
Coster or whatever.
Coster Waldo.
Yeah, doing the Delta stuff. And literally he's just like, yeah, we stayed at a 4-star hotel this night. And he's like, and literally he's like, our first day we walk into the unit, they're just like, you guys want to blow up a door? And they was like, sure. And so they basically blew up a door and learned how to breach it.
Breachers, yeah.
And he's like, we had so much fun. It was the exact opposite. Yeah.
It was perfect because that's exactly, that's the stuff those guys get to do.
Yeah.
Well, man, but that scene though with Shugart and Gordon, oh my gosh, it kills me every time, especially when Gordon has been shot and killed and Shugart's the only one, and he goes back to Durant and he's like, Gordy's dead, man. Good luck.
Yeah, shoot anyone that comes this way. Yeah. Just there's so many moments like that in this.
Where's the rescue party? We're it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that they volunteered for that, knowing that there was no support coming.
They knew
what they were doing.
Yeah, they did. They knew it was a one-way ticket. They for sure knew that. That's part and parcel of why they were both awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor posthumously. Yeah. But yeah, that scene just wrecks me. At
least can say the guy who plays Durant actually got to meet him. Like that's who did their like. It's like Piven and the guy who plays Durant both went through like I don't know, helicopter school or whatever and stuff like that. Met with him, and Durant was one of their teachers and kind of got to chat with him, tell them kind of his experiences, and so there was a lot that he was able to pull from playing that character. But I love the back and forth between him and Piven. You know, like again, there's like it's like limo is not a word. I mean, there's
word common usage.
Again, there's so many small bits of you show the camaraderie of all of these characters together that quickly make you care about them.
Right.
And there's so many, like there's so many that they follow that it's difficult. It is a masterclass on how to draw your audience in to connect. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you get every spectrum. You get veteran Delta operators. You get, NCOs with Eversman that are experienced but have never faced combat. Mm-hmm. And then you get the Greenhorn with Orlando Bloom's character, Blackburn. Yeah.
Well, and then also Ewan McGregor, who, he's been in the army for a while, but has never seen content. By the way,
they couldn't use that guy's real name because he'd done horrible things.
No, I did not know
Grimes is a fake name for that character because sometime from the events in 93 to the movie, he had gone to prison or for something, or I won't get into it, but it's just a made up name. By the way, everybody's in this movie. You got Ty Burrell in there as like a medic.
Yep. I just noticed Ty Burrell this watching. So I was like, what the heck? The guy from Modern Family's in this? How did I know this? Yeah. Like it's a who's cast. It's kind of like the same thing with Saving Private Ryan. And all of a sudden you have like all of these different people. Like you go back and go like, oh, there's Paul Giamatti. I didn't know Paul Giamatti was in Saving Private Ryan. Like what the heck? Like how is this happening? There's also like the dialogue in this is also done really, really well too. And obviously it's still interesting, even though most of it has to be done kind of very like how the military speaks of like Roger this and copy that and hua and all that stuff. Like, yet they still intersperse it with good dialogue of bringing things interesting. And a lot of that is obviously on the front end, but you still have some of that buildup. Like I always found it really interesting of where Captain Steele and when the Delta guys are getting pinned down, like in like the garbage area or whatever from like a high top area, and Captain Steele and the Delta guy are going at it of what they should do. He's like, we need to stay here or whatever. And he's like, no, we need to go. And finally he just goes, all right, we're going to make a hole. We're going to go to the gray building. And this looks at Captain Steele's like, all right, we're going to go. And Captain Steele's like, no. And Delta's just going on. And of course, then he makes the longest grenade throw of all time. Like throws it up like 6 floors from like a mile away.
Oh yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. Just right there. Perfect. But I did like that they showed the Delta guys with different helmets, because I remember reading the book and Bowden was saying that like Delta doesn't wear normal like Kevlar helmets. They basically wear like boxing.
Not then, no.
A lot of times they wear like the softer helmets. Basically, he's like, the worst thing that you do is just bump your head. That's what we're protecting ourselves from. Like,
well, they wore basically a hockey style helmet. And I don't remember what year they changed out, but now they wear basically the Army modernized so much that now the helmets, basically every unit, the helmet they have is much lighter, but is full protection. Mm-hmm. And so Delta's not wearing
a different helmet anymore.
No, they're light enough now that they don't have to. Because if you get shrapnel, they just go right through that plastic hockey. Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, like I remember Bowden was saying in the book that they weren't really protecting them. They weren't worried about protecting themselves that way. It was much more about just they were moving so fast. They just wanted them to protect their head from hitting something, So, but I always enjoy that they kind of took Grimes under their wing. That William Fichtner's character kind of did. He really cared about him. I was like,
except he doesn't listen. He keeps
doing dumb stuff. Like
stay away from the walls.
Which was is not so much because of the explosion that happens like right after the film. It was much more so because bullets actually, when they kind of get like, depending on the way they shot, they actually kind of just hover and like not hover, but they will follow a wall. And so if you're close to a wall, you're more likely to actually get hit by a bullet than anything else.
Okay.
So at least that's what Bowden was saying in his book that I remember.
No, if that's what he was saying, that's the case, because that book is just meticulously researched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good read.
Yeah, it was really a very good read.
Yeah.
man.
And a good adaptation.
Very good adaptation. Yeah. I mean, where he needed a cut from the book, he did. I think it was done really, really well. Yes, there was a couple things that he had to combine, not make reference to, but overall, I think this is a phenomenal film.
And the score, man.
Well, and this is like, I remember thinking to myself when I first watched this, I was like, that I saw was Hans Zimmer, because this obviously is nothing like normal Hans Zimmer.
This is some of his best work.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it was he spent a couple, because of course I watched the behind the scenes. He spent like a couple months of just kind of pulling in all of this kind of African music, as well as kind of just getting in his head of he wanted to do something that wasn't the same. Because obviously he just did Gladiator with Ridley Scott, and that has the very typical kind of Hans Zimmer-esque feel to it. And he wanted something very different, and just it hits. This soundtrack really does such a great job.
High level filmmaking.
Yeah, very, very high level.
I don't know where I rank this on my like war movies, but it's certainly up there. Got Private Ryan. I'm a big fan of Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, I think this is after Private Ryan for me. I think this is my second, if not even maybe a little bit over, because I've watched a lot more than Private Ryan, much like yourself. So yeah. I wonder in some ways, does that mean I like it better than Saving Private Ryan? No,
I can still say I think without a doubt that Private Ryan's the better film, but I still stand by the rewatchability of this one. I don't know exactly why that is, but it's not really got anything to do with the runtime. It's a similar length movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. They do establish things pretty quickly without like a ton of just solid exposition, because you get the exchange with
Atto and General Shepard.
Yes. Yeah. Where he's like, Garrison. This is not your war. And he's countering him like, yeah, but it's like genocide.
This is civil war. This is our war.
Yeah. And he's
a
really good performance he's great.
Just for the short, like he's in it for like 5 seconds.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, they establish that, and then you see the UN trying to do a food shipment drop, and they come in and start shooting people, and they're seeing it from the helicopter, and like, can we engage? And they're like, no, the rules of engagement are like, are you being fired upon? No. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. Yeah. Team America, World Police.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I do like that we reunited 3 Heat actors in this film, though.
Yeah. Sizemore, William,
and Piven.
Yeah. Man.
I always forget that Piven is in for a split second in Heat.
Oh yeah, because
he's the doctor. Yeah,
my daughter got me this shirt for Father's Day, and De Niro's like, I don't give up. Take it off. that sad look he gives.
Yeah.
Super funny. No, you're right. The heat connections are
everywhere.
Now there's no Gladiator connection with this movie though, is there? Any carryovers? Actor? I don't think there's carryover actor-wise.
No, because you have Bloom and Eric Bana did Troy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with Gladiator, no, there's no one from Gladiator that I think. If it is, it's like a small bit role.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Crazy cast. Great film. This is not really at his best, but this is like top of his game kind of a deal, Like it's hard to say because you have Blade Runner so much earlier, and that's a phenomenal film. You've got
Alien, Blade Runner, this Gladiator.
Yeah. Napoleon. Sorry, I had to.
We got a Napoleon down. We got a Napoleon down. Oh, what a dumpster fire.
Yeah, that is a dumpster fire. Oh,
it's all right.
It is.
It's all right.
It is. Oh, man. Well, I just got to say this. If you haven't seen this, it is a hard but good watch. And it's done really well. A war film that is done very, very well.
Yeah.
At least coming from someone who has not experienced war personally. So it's brutal.
It is, and it's a downer ending. It's not,
Yeah.
The ending's great. It's absolutely. It did not end the way that I thought it would. I don't remember how Bowden wraps things up because it's really just a series of articles. So it doesn't really have like a super conclusive ending to the book. And that's probably the strength of the film over the book, is the way that Ridley wraps it up with Eversman's monologue, basically, which props to Hartnett, man. I thought Hartnett was going to be a mega star after this movie, and he just decided was not his path.
No. Well, I
respect that.
He almost turned it down because he had just done Pearl Harbor and really didn't want to do another blockbuster. Yeah. But then he read the script and kind of saw Ridley's vision, was like, all right, let's sign on for it.
Yeah. But then obviously we mentioned turns down The Dark Knight, which prevents him from doing what he really wanted to do, which was The Prestige. Mm-hmm. So, but
he got to work with Nolan later on.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. The more I read about that guy, the more I respected his decision-making process. And he said there were some bad situations when he was in LA.
Oh, I'm sure.
That came to light. He had stalkers and stuff showing up at his house, and he just had to get out of there. And I think he's doing just fine. So
some of the same reasons why I left LA.
Stalkers.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wayne Knight showed up at your door.
Yeah. Kept riding his bicycle past my apartment. What's going on, man?
I think we'll
put
a bow on this one.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this week's episode of Cinema A to B. We really appreciate it. If you want to reach out to us, please feel free. You can comment on our YouTube channel on the video, or you can send us an email at cinemaa2b@gmail.com. We're happy to, if you want to tell us your thoughts about Black Hawk Down, if you want to give us a recommendation of a movie you want us to review, or not really review, but just talk about, happy to. We just want to reach out and tell us how awesome we are, because you know what? It's good to hear sometimes. So feel free to do that. We'll see you next Monday with the newest episode of Cinema A to B.
Thanks, everybody.